Yeah, right there, lads. I got to be British, yeah. And one of my favourite pastimes, other than being blackmailed by omniscient and omnipotent entities into playing an entire series of games, is watching the telly. And one of my favourite telly programmes, or shows, or whatever you want to call it, of all time, is Doctor Who.
Hey! What's going on there?
Calm down, I'm not reviewing the show.
I don't care, you've clearly forgotten about our deal.
No, I haven't. I just want a bit of a break from Sonic games, just to do something different.
I never said you could take any breaks.
You also never said that I couldn't take breaks.
Touché.
So yeah, now I'm going to dedicate the rest of this time to talk about nothing but Doctor Who games.
You son of a bitch!
As I've just said, Doctor Who is my favourite telly programme of all time. That might be due to the fact that I haven't watched many other programmes, but that's irrelevant. It's a fantastic programme nonetheless.
But for now, I'm going to be getting into the very few games that were released based on the classic era of the show.
What the f*** does that mean?
I thought you were omniscient.
I know everything except from that random bullshit that nobody cares about!
Alright, bit harsh, but let me explain.
Doctor Who is a show that has been broadcast by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, since November 1963, with the first episode, An Unearthly Child, airing on the 23rd of November 1963. The absolute briefest synopsis of the show possible that I could give is that the show follows this humanoid alien called the Doctor. He's what's called a Time Lord, and because of this he's very special in a number of ways. For one, he has a time-space machine called the TARDIS, which he can use to travel anywhere in all of time and space. The TARDIS is also in the shape of an old British police box, because its chameleon circuit, which would usually turn the outside of the ship into something from the time period so he can just sort of blend into the background and go unnoticed, got stuck when he stayed in 20th century England for a bit too long. And two, whenever he's mortally wounded, he goes through a regeneration. This changes not only the Doctor's physical appearance, but also his mannerisms, personality, basically everything about him, but he still retains his memories of his past self. The show mainly follows the Doctor travelling aimlessly throughout the universe, somehow always finding himself on Earth, meeting one or two companions and just going on adventures. The programme was somewhat infamous in its day for having an extremely low budget in comparison to its sci-fi competitors such as Star Trek. This led to a few infamously hilarious moments in the show. For example, this group of enemies literally just being a sheet of tinfoil just being waved about by some production staff. It was because of this, and a few other factors which are very complex so I won't be covering them today, that the show was actually cancelled in mid-1989. This period of the show, from 1963 to 89, has been dubbed by the Doctor Who community as the Classic Era. The show wasn't cancelled forever though, as it was brought back, for better or for worse, in 2005, and is still going strong to this day. This is what's known as the New Series, or as I like to call it, New Who.
Alright, we get it, you're a f***ing nerd. Can we just get into the games now?
Not yet. There's still something I need to explain first.
In the mid-1980s, while Doctor Who was going through something of a difficult time production-wise, the gaming industry was more or less in its infancy over here in jolly old England. It was around this time that 8-bit home computers that would go on to dominate the British gaming market up until the 16-bit era, such as the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Amstrad CPC, and the BBC Micro, were just starting to be released. So by the time that the gaming industry had really started to kick into full gear, Doctor Who was already one foot into the grave. This means that there was barely any games released that were based on the classic Doctor Who series. There's also a rather surprising lack of games based on New Who, most of them being released around the time that Matt Smith was playing the 11th incarnation of the titular Doctor. Now, to be fair, it's rather difficult to translate a program as varied as Doctor Who into a game, but let's see what the devs were able to come up with.
Now, before the big man upstairs gets a bit too impatient, let's get right into the games.
Bloody hell, finally!
The first ever game released that was based on Doctor Who was the suitably named Doctor Who The First Adventure. It was released in 1983 on the BBC Micro, the BBC Micro being an 8-bit computer that was, funnily enough, financially backed by the BBC. It was written by Jeremy Ruston. How you can write a game from 1983 that looks like f***ing this, I haven't a clue, but Wikipedia mentions a writer for this game, so if you have a problem with that, take it with them. Probably the most notable thing about this game is the title sequence. It features the TARDIS alongside the text, the TARDIS just above it, just in case you don't know what a TARDIS is, I guess. It also features quite possibly the worst, most ear-piercing rendition of the Doctor Who theme ever created. Just for context, this is what the Doctor Who theme sounded like when this game was released. And this is what the theme sounds like in this game. Butchered theme tune aside, there isn't much to this game, musically and graphically speaking. That's not too surprising considering that this game was released in 1983, which was apparently before music during gameplay was discovered. Also, I'd like to point out that in the first level of this game, the Doctor is represented by a single pixel. I just find that hilarious, I don't know why. Speaking of the levels of this game, there's 4 of them. You need to complete all 4 of them within an hour unless time will implode in on itself or something like that, I don't know. The 4 levels, or episodes as this game likes to call them, are called the Labyrinth of Death, the Prison, the Pterodactyls, and the Box of Tantalus, respectively. They each play completely different, with episode 1 being a rip-off of Pac-Man, 2 being a rip-off of f***ing Frogger of all things, 3 being a rip-off of Space Invaders, and 4 being a rip-off of Battleship. That's right, the first officially licensed Doctor Who game ever released was just a collection of rip-offs of arcade games. As if that wasn't enough, the game also has some of the most backwards controls ever, with Z and X moving you left and right, and dash and / moving you up and down. What the fuck? I know this was before the time the PC games were mainstream, so there wasn't really a real standard, but come on, whose crack-fueled mind thought this was a good control scheme?
Now if you think that's a bad start for the world of Doctor Who games, the next one is barely a fucking game!
The next Doctor Who game to be released was Doctor Who and the Warlord, released in 1985 for the BBC Micro. It starred an unspecified incarnation of the Doctor, presumably Colin Baker's 6th Doctor, who has to find the Warlord or something. I didn't really play this game for that long. You want to say why? Here's why. Yep, this is literally it. Fucking text. This genre of game is what's known as a text adventure, and was relatively popular back in the days when home computers were about as powerful as a potato. These games operate by you typing in certain commands like NESW to move in their respective compass directions.
Now personally, I find these sort of games to be absolutely pointless. The entire point of a game is for you to be able to see things happen based on your physical input. So when you strip away the visual element of it, you're basically left with what is a semi-interactive ebook. At that point you might as well just pick up any of the hundreds of Doctor Who books that there are and just start reading that. Or hell, even better, pick up one of the choose your adventure style Doctor Who books. That's basically just as good as this game. There is one notable thing about this game though, and that's that there was supposed to be a ZX Spectrum version of this game, but for some reason it never went through. Maybe putting what is essentially a book onto a ZX Spectrum tape was just too much for them. I don't know. All I'm gonna say is that when people thought that Doom 2016 wouldn't run on the Switch, at least they were proven wrong.
Thankfully though, the next game, Doctor Who and the Mines of Terror, is at least a bit more interesting. It was the first multi-platform Doctor Who game, being released on the BBC Micro, Amstrad CPC and Commodore 64 in the same year as Doctor Who and the Snowfest over here. It follows the Doctor and his robotic cat? That's weird, I could have sworn the K9 was a dog. Oh wait, it's not K9, it's called Splinks? What the bloody hell is going on here? Anyway, the Master is trying to blow up time or something like that, I don't know. And you, as a Doctor and Splinks, have to stop him. There's these enemies all over the game which strongly resemble Daleks, you know, probably the most iconic villain in the entire Doctor Who series. They aren't referred to as Daleks in-game, but let's be real, we all know they're Daleks. It opens with a title screen, as most games tend to do, which depicts a pretty well rendered image of Colin Baker and the TARDIS. It also has a rather good rendition of the Doctor Who theme that doesn't make me want to rip my fucking ears off my head. This game is really fucking confusing, and the vague and not very detailed manual that came with it doesn't really help. I've looked up walkthroughs and even watched other reviews of this game on YouTube, and I still haven't a single clue what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing in this game. I'm assuming that I'm meant to help these little green men get away from the Daleks, but I don't know how since I don't appear to be able to interact with them. The controls are also a pain in the arse. If you thought Sonic 3D Blast had annoying controls, well, meet Minds of Terror, a game where you can't control the trajectory of your jump at all once you've left the ground. It is mind-numbing. I can sort of see how this turned out though, since good platformers for home computers were few and far between. But that doesn't excuse the fact that these controls are so horrible that they make me want to go back to the game where all I do is type never eat shredded wheat.
Wonder why everyone's told us to not eat this. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? This is the i5! Put the shredded wheat down! Oh, for
All versions except from the C64 version don't have any music during the gameplay, but the singular song that does play during the C64 version is a tune so common that it will forever irritate me that I don't know the name of it. One thing that I think I should mention though is that the company that excreted this game onto the earth, Micropower, went bankrupt as a result of this game and therefore went out of business. A suiting punishment.
Now let's get on to the first and probably only classic Doctor Who game that I can actually call good with little to no caveats.
Dalek Attack was a side-scrolling platformer released on a ton of home computers. The Atari ST, Amiga, MS-DOS, C64, and even the good old Specky got a version of the game, which, when you think about it, a 16-bit platformer being ported to a hardly 8-bit system, is quite a miracle. The game starts off with this intro cutscene, which kind of looks like a flattened version of the 7th Doctor's intro, complete with the uncomfortable wink that Sylvester McCoy gives to the camera. The music that plays during this is actually quite decent. It's certainly the best version of the Doctor Who theme that we've seen so far. The different versions aren't completely the same, well in terms of level design they practically are, but in terms of characters they are slightly different. By that I mean, in the 8-bit C64 and Specky versions, you can only play as Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor, however the ST and Amiga versions give you the option to play as Tom Baker's 4th Doctor. The music overall, at least in the Amiga version, is pretty good if a bit forgettable. The remix of the Doctor Who theme for the main menu of the game is a brilliant touch. Most of the music though, although being a bit forgettable, certainly wouldn't feel too out of place in the soundtrack of a classic Doctor Who serial. But then there's the other computer systems that, due to their vastly different sound chips, sound totally distinct from one another. The DOS version makes me want to physically remove my ears in the most brutal manner possible because of the absolutely horrid sound font that the devs decided to go with. The ST version fucked up the bassline of the theme so badly that I'd be surprised if the sound guy wasn't fired right after making it. The ZX Spectrum version is just kind of charming in a minimalistic way. And the C64 version is probably the best of the bunch other than the Amiga version, since it's not completely fucking butchered.
So yeah, that's just about all the games released based on the classic era of Doctor Who. I'm sure there were some others that I just didn't cover, or maybe some bootlegs, but they're either so shit that I don't even want to approach them with a 10-foot pole, or maybe they just don't exist. But yeah, next time I'm going to be revisiting some games from my past and seeing if they still hold up.
You say that as if your channel isn't entirely based on that concept.
Shut the f***